I never even saw her. She was like tucked under a old dried out tumbleweed that had just been blown up under there. She had a really, really good cover. Good morning and welcome back to Boisterous Cock Farmstead. I am your host today, Charles. Asher is taking a nap, his morning nap here, so you just got me for right now. But what I wanted to talk about this morning is kind of a bitter reality of managing a farm and especially managing a flock of chickens. So what I did this morning was, and I didn't want to get that on film because I don't think too many people really want to necessarily see this, and it's not something I really truly enjoy doing by any means. But what I did today was I actually culled a lot of the roosters that we have, and you pretty much have to do it every year. This year I actually had a pretty large hatch that I did. I did egg layer hatch, and I also did some of my homegrown broiler crosses and hatched both of those out at the same time, so they were roughly the same age. But one of the things too this year is that I've actually had 3 different hens hatch out their own clutches of eggs this year, and that's never happened before. So I don't know if it was because of the heat or what the reason is, but I say that to say that there are going to be times that you might have chickens either through your own hatching or just chickens kind of going off and doing their own thing and, you know, sitting on some eggs and hatching them out for you. You're going to have males that you just don't really have a use for. I understand the desire to be compassionate for animals and valuing life and all of that, and there is definitely, you know, something to be said about that. However, there's also something to be said about proper management of your flock or herd or whatever it is, and a natural and beneficial and healthy part of that is doing a cull. When you have something that possesses some type of genetic presentation that you don't want to continue down the line, the best thing to do is get it out of your flock or your herd. I would do the same thing in my pigs. If I had a pig that just didn't present the way that I would want, then that's like first slated to be butchered, and it would not make it to a breeding status. But I'm going to show you one of the main reasons why it's necessary to cull out roosters. So here's a group of hens that are getting constantly mounted, and you can see their feathers are all torn up, their back is all scratched up. What naturally will happen is there are some roosters and hens that form a bond, or whatever you want to call it. Those become the favorites of the rooster, whether they're too slow, whether they're very submissive, or whatever the case may be. I've got some chickens, some of my hens, they don't look like they've ever been mounted at all, and maybe they haven't. You'll have some chickens, some hens, that no missing feathers, you know, they don't look all ragged and things like that. And then you've got other ones like this one. Her back is raw, her wings are getting stripped of their feathers. And what that's from is it's from when the rooster mounts them, they put their feet, their claws, on the wings. They hook on the wings and on the back, and they pull, they pinch down with their beak on the back of the head. And so that that is one indication that you have too many roosters in your flock. It can also just be you have a very, very submissive hen, regardless of how many roosters you have. If you have one rooster, you might have that. So it's an indication, not necessarily a rule. You see, there's one. She hardly looks like she's ever been mounted, although I know I've seen her get mounted before, so I know she has been mounted at least at some point in time. So here's one of my volunteer. This is the most recent volunteer mother and brood here. And this is a Cornish cross hen that she was found. I found her up underneath my double wide over there, and she was just sitting on a clutch of eggs. And it wasn't, if it hadn't been for the chick that I heard peeping over there, I never even saw her. She was like tucked under a old dried out tumbleweed that had just been blown up under there. She had a really, really good cover. So this mama right here, she decided she was gonna lay her eggs up in the upper part of that coop, the main coop that I've got over there. And I usually have a piece of plywood up against, kind of containing that whole coop area. And I do it mostly for the winter time, so that it kind of keeps the heat and everything, keeps the wind down from being able to blow through the coop and keep them a little bit warmer. And because of that, I can't see up in there. And so she had laid in the floor, and who knows what other eggs that, what other hens might have been laying eggs up in there. But this is the only chick that actually came out of it. The other eggs were not viable that I pulled out of there. See, these are all the young pullets from this year. And then you can see I've got two roosters in there, and those are the Cornish cross roosters. So I'm holding on to them for the potential breeding. They'll be part of, or at least one of those will be part of the second round of breeding. I'm not sure which one. One of the qualities that I'm trying to bring out, if I can, as part of the normal selection for making my own broiler cross that is sustainable, that I can breed on my own farm, that will grow to a level that's truly worth growing out, and has the feed conversion that makes it worth growing them out within 12 weeks is the longest window that I want to grow them out for. So anywhere between that 8 to 12 week mark, I don't think I'm going to get a cross that's anywhere near as good as the Cornish cross by any means. But that's been something that I've always been working towards since we got here. And I tried it originally with some red broiler chicks that I bought the very first year, and I was getting just way inconsistent results, feather coloration, and it was just basically all across the board. And then this year I decided I was going to do the same thing, but with the Cornish cross, hens only. I didn't keep any Cornish roosters. I'm not too happy with the results of this one, and so my next generation, whether it's going to be this fall or next spring, is I'm actually going to take my good proven larger breast rooster from my main breast flock, and he is going to get bred to my Cornish cross hens. Anytime you're doing a hybridization or a cross experiment, you have to be very patient, because You may not get what you're looking for the first generation or even second generation, but by the third generation you should have pretty consistent results. So you want to keep the best of each generation, and then by the time you get to the third generation, you should at least know what you can potentially be working with going forward. Hi, Pumpkin. The roosters that I ended up getting culled today, they weren't much bigger, if any bigger, than the breast hens that I've got out there. So I don't want to continue breeding those if they're going to be inferior size, especially if I'm looking for a broiler size. And the egg laying roosters that I called out today, because they were bred to a smaller rooster, these were the ones that were bred to the cream leg bar and my laying flock. The reason I'm using those, even though they're smaller, is that for their size they actually lay fairly large eggs, and they lay blue eggs. This time around I wanted to breed everybody to a blue egg layer, and then we should have olive eggs, or in the case with breeding with these guys, those should be blue egg layers as well. And I'm only looking for the females with that particular hatch. It's definitely not a fun thing to do, to take the life of an animal. And when I'm butchering, even for the meat birds and their entire purpose on this farm, at least, I shouldn't say that, because I've kept some Cornish cross hens by design. I've kept them for doing some hybridized experiments. But generally speaking, Cornish cross or specific meat birds, whether you want to do red broiler, Freedom Rangers, or you name whatever a lot of people use for broiler specific. When you raise those out, you have the intent from start, whether it's egg or if you're bringing the chicks on, day old chicks or whatever, shipped to your farm. I've done pretty much any way that you can get a chicken. I've gotten them here to the farm. So whenever you have that intent, even even for me, there's still, especially the first one, the day of the butcher, that very first chicken, that one's the hardest for me. Once you kind of get over that hurdle, you start the process, and it's a little bit easier, but it's still not enjoyable or anything like that. But if you eat meat at all, then some animal had to die for you to eat. There we go. If you eat meat at all, somebody had to kill that meat for you, and that's the reality of it. From that knowledge, you can decide whether you want to eat meat or not, and that's a personal choice. But you can't ignore that just because you're not the one that did the butchering, that it's somehow better. I would argue that the opposite is true, that because you actually made someone else kill the animal for you, you don't have the same appreciation and respect for the animal, by extension, because you didn't put in the work, you didn't do the chores every day, and you didn't see how much food it took and what the time took, and moving the tractor around, if that's the way that, if you're doing a chicken tractor style, if you're raising them on pasture or whatever it was, the entire process from start to finish, when you know how much work goes into raising protein, whether it be pig or chicken or beef or something along those lines. Even rabbits. I haven't raised rabbits for me myself, although I've hunted rabbits and eaten wild rabbit in the past. But what I've noticed is that when you're just buying it in the grocery store, you tend to use more meat than when you are raising it yourself and butchering it yourself. And I have a couple theories on that. I don't know how accurate it is, but one is the flavor aspect of it. You're buying meat from the grocery store. It doesn't have the same flavor, and so it actually takes more. Same with vegetables and fruit too. There's just not a concentration of flavor in a lot of those products. And the other one is, like I said, is that you know what it actually took, and so you are more conscious of that when you're consuming, and then you only consume what you feel like you really need, not what is what you have done out of I guess habit, or what other people necessarily do, or use portion control or portion sizes or whatever. So those are a few things. They're not, obviously it's not an all-inclusive list, but it's just a few things that I felt like I wanted to take some time and touch on and give a little bit of update of what is going on here on the farm, and why it is I feel like it's important to talk about that stuff. Is it's important for the animals' health themselves. As you saw, are you just stealing the camera spotlight, or you just want some attention? It's just like the same thing in the wild. You've got natural predators and things that control populations of any particular species. And I mean, this cat right here, she is a natural predator to all these birds and rabbits and mice and rats and stuff like that are around, that are nuisances for us in what we're trying to do. And it's food for her, and it's skill for her, and it's enjoyment and purpose in her life. Obviously she's still a kitten, but she has caught a few little birds and little mice around. And so they're never going to decimate the population, but they keep it in check. They keep it at a certain balance, and that's what you're looking for. Is you're looking for that balance. So I hope this was actually helpful for somebody. Good information. Hopefully it didn't upset anyone, but if it did, I think it's probably more so just the idea of the subject matter, not necessarily the way that I conveyed it. But if I did convey it in a way that's upsetting, I did not intend that to happen. Anyway, I will let that be the end of this one. If you've enjoyed this video, please give us a like. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Click the bell notification to be informed when we have new videos coming out. And as always, thank you for joining us today, and until next time, God bless. Okay, now I'm done. Now I'm done talking. I can hold you, give you attention. Yeah, you want attention. You want some love. You want some love. That's what you want.